In our last episode, we fully explored the Vimpop factory, and in its basement we discovered Dima's horrifying secret. We need to confront him on this, but first we can follow up with everything else we learned from Dima's memories. Dima knew the location of the USS Democracy's nuclear launch key, which turns out was at the Harbor Grand Hotel, and he buried a kill switch on an island far to the northwest that we can use to turn off one of the turbines powering Far Harbor's fog condensers, effectively killing all of the people in Far Harbor. We also discovered the location of a number of missing marine combat armor shipments that went down aboard ships around the waters of Far Harbor during the nuclear war of 2077. Looking on our map, we see that 2 of the shipments are on the western waters of the island, close to Dimas Cash, and one of them is just south of the MS Azalea, which we've already explored. We'll start by tracking down this marine combat armor and then finding Dimas Cash. This journey will take us through a marked location called Rayburn Point, so we might as well explore it while we're there. The first cache is just south of the MS Azalea. Heading to the MS Azalea, we can drop off our power armor on a point of land just north of the shipwreck. Then, donning our rescue diver's suit, we can swim down, down, and down until we discover the wreckage of a pre-war vessel. This doesn't appear to be a military ship. I get the impression that the military was contracting deliveries from the private sector. The crow's nest is easily accessible, but it's filled in with garbage and rubble. The main level is also filled in with broken consoles crates, and it's practically half buried. The chest itself has actually been knocked outside the ship. We find a sealed shipment lying on the seabed near to the bow of the vessel. Inside, we find the Assault Marine combat armor left and right arm. Now, we already have the Recon Marine Armor left and right arm, which we've purchased from some of the vendors on the island, and those are better than the ones we just found. These don't have any legendary effects, though they do have the same stats as the Recon arms and the Children of Adam Inquisitor arms. The next shipment is just west of Haddock Cove. We went to Haddock Cove in a previous episode, and I explored it in a dedicated video that you can watch here. Heading to the shore, we can hop out of our power armor and swim west. We actually see the wreckage peeking above the water. It's tilted to the side, making it difficult to explore. We do find a door to an upper compartment. Inside, we find 2 explosives boxes filled with all sorts of explosives. There's also a wooden crate here with scrap and an ammo bag, good for ballistic weave, but no shipment of marine armor. Heading out and going down to the main deck, we find a wooden crate laying on the main deck, and heading into the larger middle section, we see a number of shelves covered in boxes and crates. At the very back of this room, we find the sealed shipment, and inside we find the Assault Marine combat armor left and right legs. At last, we have a complete set of Assault Marine combat armor. Remember, the legs were the only pieces we needed. The Assault Marine combat armor left and right leg have the same stats. Each has 23 ballistic and energy resistance, and 10 radiation resistance. Each piece weighs 14 pounds. But remember, we can modify these with the ultralight modifications to significantly reduce their weight. On a floating raft near to this wreckage, we find the skeleton of a scientist and a suitcase. This is a Vault-Tec scientist. His lab coat has the Vault-Tec symbol. In the suitcase, we find some money and armor. And if we accidentally touch the skeleton, oh man, I will never get used to that bug. There are a few more things to see around here. There's another wreckage with an explosives box in the crow's nest, a skeleton hanging out just outside. And from here, if we swim due west, we can actually make it all the way to Red Death Island. Remember, this is the island in my episode on the Mariner that we visited to kill the Red Death. We can come here at any point during our exploration of the DLC, but Red Death only appears during that quest. However, this is a good opportunity to loot any of the shipwrecks we might have missed when we were here earlier. I found quite a few containers that I missed, including a steamer trunk. With that, we found 2 of 3 shipments. The next one is in the water just south of Rayburn Point. We haven't been to Rayburn Point yet, so we'll head north to explore it. Along the way, we discover a trapper encampment called Rock Point Camp. Point Camp is named after a large rock at the point of this camp. They use it as a sniper's roost. We find one ammo box at the top here, and a boardwalk connecting a sunken ship to the mainland. Along the boardwalk, we find an ammo box, and in a dinghy, an end-of-dungeon steamer trunk with over 800 caps inside, and a bunch of chems and ammunition. The sunken ship is empty, but continuing along the boardwalk, we find a wooden box, and then we can follow it to the shore where we find a first aid kit on a post and an ammo box in the connected building, where we see the trappers were hanging a radstack out to drain. The dock is next to a ruined house, with a fallen tree crashed into the attic. Inside, we find a cooking station, some dirty water on a countertop, caps and ammunition in a mirror. Outside, we find an outhouse, with the occupant still inside. He was reading a book while relaxing when the bombs dropped. Must have been a science book, because he took some mentats. Frustratingly, though, I couldn't loot those mentats. I tried to use my explosive radium rifle to move them, and, it worked, but I don't know where it went. Oh no, probably clipped under the ground. We see that the trappers have decorated this house with the bones of a whale. The bone's rib cage is around a large car, and using that fallen tree, we can climb onto the roof where we see the trappers have placed other whale bones as decoration. But that's it for Rock Point Camp. Continuing north, we can kill some of the wildlife.
Something out there.
In the ruins of a small sailboat, we find a skeleton surrounded by cigarettes, and he had a fusion core in his hand. Smoking cigarettes and cigars while holding a fusion core? Someone liked to play dangerously. As we continued to climb the hill killing creatures, we found a novice-locked box safe lying amongst the rocks near to a tree. Inside, a bunch of caps, ammunition, and explosives. By now, we've arrived at a small island just northwest of Rock Point Camp. Following it north, we don't find much, just a few more monsters. And when we reach the northernmost point of this island, we see the ruins of a dock on the island just north of us near to Rayburn Point. We can skip on over with our jetpack. Oh, almost. But it's a good thing we went for a swim. In this ruined ship near to the dock, we find a first aid kit and a suitcase sitting on some seaweed. On the dock, we can take the staircase up to the main level. There's a shack outside the ruins of a big house with a ghoul inside. Here we also find some mentats on a shelf and an armor workbench. Heading to the ruins of the house, we see that it's really ruined. Most of it is boarded up, but we can pass through the front door. There's some scrap and a few ghouls on this level. After looting a number of containers, we can take the staircase up to the second floor. Here we see that the ghouls had killed a gulper, but aside from a few containers, we don't find anything up here. Just outside, we find a garage. Here we can loot a toolbox, and when done, we can take the dirt road that leads to this house north towards Rayburn Point. We pass a tree with some blight growing on it. There's a skeleton on a couch just lounging around. Here we find another Lobster Grill family restaurant car. In the back we find a suitcase and a duffel bag with great ammunition inside. Soon we come upon Rayburn Point, and we see that it's swarming with trappers. Racing upstairs, we can see if there are any more. Looks like that's about it. There's a cap stash on a radio, a first aid kit on a wall, a teddy bear in a box, hey guy, and an advanced locked wall safe behind the ruined headboard of a bed. Inside, we find some ammunition and some scrap. Heading downstairs, we can loot the corpses, but we don't find a lot down here. So heading out to the deck, we can take it around to the rear of the building. There's an ammo canister on a table.
Have to be the day you die.
That's the spirit.
Doggone trappers. Looks like there's a boathouse down there by the shore. Racing down, we can clear it. Here we find a little bit of junk. There's a dock leading out to another ruined boat, but the ruined boat is empty. Heading back up, if we look off to the left, we see that we can crawl beneath the deck. And if we do, we are rewarded with another end-of-dungeon steamer trunk with, again, over 800 caps inside and a bunch of ammunition. Holy cow. Rayburn Point had a large observation deck looking over the water. Looks like a lot of people died here when the bombs dropped. Here's a lady who was drinking whiskey to toast in the apocalypse. This poor fellow was having brunch. But to find this next armor cache, we need to continue north. Along the way, we stumble upon the ruins of a barn with the Nuka-Cola machine outside.
That's the last one.
More trappers, and the ground was booby-trapped. We see that this must have been the trappers' chem operation. Heading upstairs, we can loot a chem cooler next to a chemistry station. And on a crate surrounded by lit candles, we find Dylan's note. Mara, I made your stuff, but those damn trappers keep sniffing around, and I'm not going to pick a fight while I'm outnumbered. I took the stash and buried it in that old grave. You know the one. Bring a shovel. Oh, so the trappers took over a chem operation. Looks like we need to keep our eyes peeled for a grave. Next to a boat up here, we find an expert-locked steamer trunk with more caps and ammunition inside. Heading to the ground floor, we can loot the containers and a nearby tool chest. There's a weapons workbench here. And, if we don't have one already, a shovel, which we may need. Moving out from here, we see a dirt trail leading down to an illuminated house. There's a dead dog outside. But we didn't do this. We can loot the bodies of some already dead trappers. Heading inside, we can loot a couple of containers. We find the skeleton of a man lying before a master-locked box safe. Inside, ammunition, caps, explosives, and chems. On a bookshelf nearby is a novice-locked first aid kit. And in the kitchen, we can find some Brahmin meat in the fridge and a suitcase next to the skeleton of a lady. Heading out, we have to be careful. Oh! These trappers booby-trapped the house. I really wanted to find that grave, but I got distracted by so many ruins. To the west, up a hill, we find the ruins of a house with a campfire outside. There's a skeleton draped over a crate by a campfire and some radstag meat. Next to a cooking station is some scrap, and inside we just find a couple of containers. There is a duffel bag up there, but it's kind of hard to get to. But if we climb up this fallen tree, we can access it, whereupon we find ammunition and caps. The northernmost section of the island has the most ruins. Most are completely destroyed and guarded by mirelurks. Near to one, we find a crate with a skull, a toothbrush, and toothpaste. Ooh, I guess someone was getting in some practice on a skull. Nearby, we see that a teddy bear has made use of a door as a raft, though disturbingly, he also has a toaster here. Don't do it, Teddy. You have so much to live for. These ruins are littered with skeletons, a man in a corner, and just outside a woman lying next to another box safe, this one locked with an advanced lock. Inside, caps and ammunition. Yeah.
Not that it's an option.
We can loot the remaining eggs, and heading around the northern tip, we can move east until we find another building. This one's swarming with super mutants.
Something out.
With the attic clear, we can loot a duffel bag up here, a suitcase, and some scrap. Heading down to the main level, we find a number of containers, and on a shelf, we find a huge stash. Someone was stocking up for the apocalypse. We find canned foods, boxed cereal, and an assortment of chems. Then we can find an ammo box next to a cabinet and a cooler on a table. After exploring this whole island, I finally found the grave right next to the trapper house, not far away from the barn where we first found the note. With the shovel in our inventory, we can excavate the buried stash. Inside, we find Dylan's stash filled with caps, chems, a syringer rifle, and 10 berserker syringes. Here's the exact location on the map where we find Dylan's stash. Now that we've explored Rayburn Point and the entire surrounding island, we can finally head out to sea to find the final marine combat armor shipment and Dimas Cash. Heading back to Rayburn Point, we can hop out of our power armor and swim west. Eventually, we see a sunken orange shipment crate. Swimming around to the western side, we find that it's open, and inside is a sealed shipment. Inside, we find the Assault Marine Combat Armor chest piece and helmet, and a Marine wetsuit with a Marine tactical helmet. The Assault Marine Armor chest piece has the same stats as the Recon version that we already have, sans the legendary effect. It has the same stats as an Inquisitor's Marine Armor chest piece, except for that one point is swapped between ballistic and energy resistance. The Assault Marine Armor helmet has the same stats as the Recon helmet that we bought from Brooks, but without the legendary effect. So in this way, by completing this quest, we can get a full suit of this really expensive assault armor for free. We just miss out on the legendary effects. What's new with this shipment is the Marine wetsuit. According to a loading screen, this wetsuit was designed for nighttime reconnaissance operations. It has a ballistic damage and energy resistance of 5 and a radiation resistance of 5. Not terribly exciting, but it looks great. It comes with the Marine Tactical Helmet, which counterintuitively has double the resistances of the suit itself. 10 ballistic and energy damage resistance and 10 radiation resistance. The entire suit can be worn under the Marine combat armor, much like the Vault suit can be worn under much of the Commonwealth's armor. However, frustratingly, it cannot be upgraded with ballistic weave. What a tragedy! Because of this limitation, the Marine wetsuit looks amazing, but sadly, there are more practical options. Well, we have one thing left to find, and that is Dimas Cash, which is on its own little island to the northwest. Moving north along the shore of Rayburn Point, we can explore more sunken houses. In one, we find a wooden crate. In another, we find a suitcase on floating plywood next to some buff out. In the water just next to this house is a wrecked ship. Inside, we find Zeke's safe, and it's unlocked. Inside Zeke's safe is a stealth boy, a teddy bear, and a burnt copy of almost every comic in the game. Of note, we also find greaser jacket and jeans and sunglasses. This immediately reminds us of Zeke, one of the Atom Cats we met while exploring the Atom Cats garage, which I covered in my video on the Atom Cats that you can watch here. And the contents of the safe matches Zeke's character. He also wears sunglasses and the greaser jacket and jeans, and he probably loves pre-war comic books. The big question is, what is his safe doing on a shipwreck in the waters off the coast of Mount Desert Island in Maine? I just don't get this at all. We can't talk with Zeke about this safe, there's no quest related to it, and yet a developer had to sit down, put together this safe, and manually name it Zeke's safe. Presumably this boat wrecked 200 years ago during the nuclear apocalypse. If it didn't, what was Zeke doing on this boat in Maine? And why did it wreck? And if it did wreck, how did he get back to the Commonwealth? I don't get it. At any rate, as we get closer to Dima's stash, we find a land bridge leading us northwest towards the stash. Along the way, we find a skeleton and a wooden crate on a floating piece of floor, and a number of monsters. Next to a sunken boat is a first aid kit. Across the way in another sunken boat is an advanced locked box safe. At last we reach the end of the land bridge. We see another small island just west across the way. That's Dimas Cash. So we can skip on over in our power armor. we discover Dimas Cash, and we see that Dima has left a number of crates and boxes. Then, in the middle of this tiny island, we find some disturbed earth. Digging it, we uncover an uncovered case, and inside, we find the wind turbine code. Near to this is an ammo box, and looking at our map, we see a number of other islands to the north of us dotting the water. Since we're here, we might as well explore them, but they're mostly empty, and if we get too far north, we hit an invisible wall. You cannot go that way, the game says. Annoyingly, we do see stuff on the other side of this invisible wall, shipwrecks, and even a Mirelurk queen. I couldn't get over there, but I managed to lure it out, and that's it for Dimas Cash and the surrounding areas. With that, we now have everything we need to kill the people of Far Harbor. But before we make our decision, we should have all options at our disposal. In our next video, we'll head to the Harbor Grand Hotel to see if we can find the nuclear launch key and the remains of Captain Wabash. I publish new Fallout videos each and every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss that episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have and you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop. Glory to Atom! If you, like High Confessor Tectus, believe that the heresy of Far Harbor cannot be forgiven, then you can find this design on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. It also comes on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming a member here on YouTube or a patron on Patreon. YouTube members and Patreon patrons are becoming increasingly more important as YouTube continues to make platform changes that make the future of YouTube monetization uncertain. So to all my YouTube members and patrons on Patreon, you have my sincerest thanks. You make these videos possible. But more importantly, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more brand new videos.